of Carbondale. Today is May 19th. Our guest speaker is Dr. Linda Baker of the Southern Illinois University Paul Simon Public Policy Institute to discuss redistricting. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to spend it with our Rotary family, and thank you, Shane, for being our greeter today. I was going to ask Jerry to lead us in the pledge because I had somebody else that was unable to do it, but I will lead us in the pledge today. So if everybody could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And justice for all.
Thank you all. Moment of reflection today is offered by Shane.
Sure. Today's moment of reflection is from Madam Curie. In the times that we're in, nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. So, little words of wisdom for today.
Very nice.
On a nice day, and I'll have to Brian. You know you something.
Today's song time is an all-time favorite. All right. Once we get back in person, we'll have those songbooks. We'll be able to mix it up a little bit again. Shane, would you please introduce our guest today?
Sure. The Rotary Club of Carbondale always welcomes guests. I see that our fellow Rotarian R. Beck is with us today. Welcome, R. And Faith, I see that you have a guest. Would you like to introduce your guest today? Faith still there?
I am. Was multitasking there for a couple of seconds. Yes, it looks like I have two on so far. They're members of my sorority. I have, did Maretta, did she leave? Is she still on?
I am here with you, Sarah.
Maretta Brown Miller. And then I have Nia Odote Hassan. Nia is the state coordinator for our connection committee, and she knows Dr. Baker very, very well. So welcome to Rotary.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. I chose you rather than watching the Senate in session today.
Okay, that's how we roll.
Well, club announcements today. We are now up to 83 projects completed for our 100 Little Things. You can view the complete list at rotaryofcarbondale.org/centennial. And if you have a project you're working on, would like it listed, please let us know. So I think Jerry sent us a few the other day that he's working on, and we'll continue to keep those updated. We are up to 83 projects. So with less than a month to go in our centennial year, that's pretty darn close to 100, and I think we'll finish it by the end of the calendar year. So great job, Rotarians. Let's keep up the great work. we'd like to ask each of you to join us in increasing our endowment to $100,000 to celebrate our 100th year, our centennial in Rotary. I understand that the link that I had sent out was my completed form, so you couldn't actually complete your own form. We do have the updated link, and Shane's going to be sending that out in the meeting recap at the end of the day today. So please check that out today. We are up over $13,000 that has been committed so far. Our lunch sponsorship project is ongoing. We've been doing this for over a year now. So we want to thank everybody for their ongoing contributions to the lunch sponsorship project. When you get your invoice, please consider continuing to pay for your meals, even though we are not eating those meals in person. Carbondale Warming Center is using those dollars to supply the Warming Center with lunches every Wednesday. So right now, the members over there at the Warming Center are getting a nice hot meal, courtesy of Heartland Catering. There was a question about that. We are not supporting them at $250 a week anymore because we don't have that much coming into that fund. But all the contributions that are being made are being sent over to Heartland. She's using those funds, and then if she needs to, she's adding a little bit more to help fill that out. On our foundation donation challenge, I want to thank Shane for matching up to $100 in May, all the way through Linda Meredith in October. If you'd like to be added to that list, please let me know, and we'll get you added to that list, and we'll continue to increase that foundation. And Shane did just put the doodle polls for the next couple weeks in the chat, so please click on those and fill it out, and that way we've got some sharing of the wealth from greeter to the reflection, all the way through the end. Our June 2nd meeting, we discussed this at our board meeting last night. Again, we are going to be back in person with a hybrid option. The food service will potentially resume in July, so we've reached out to Patty Stokes and asked for some guidance there and what she can do. And part of that is we're also waiting to see what changes happen. There's a June 14th announcement in the state that's currently scheduled. So we're waiting until after that before we resume food service. If you would like to bring a lunch and eat your lunch with everybody during the meeting, starting on June 2nd, you're welcome to do so. But at this time, we're not going to resume the food service right away, but we will welcome you to bring a brown bag lunch, and after our meeting or during the meeting, enjoy your food. The photos that are provided here are from the Rotary Club of O'Fallon on May 17th. So they have a number of people that were in the room. I think that's actually one of my coworkers back there running the laptop, who's a member of that club. So if you're able to join us in person, we welcome you to do so. Reach out to your friends that you haven't seen in a while who haven't been with us. June 2nd is the first time we're going to be back in person, and it's a great opportunity. Hopefully we can see everybody there. District news. Here's another opportunity to see everybody, and I plan on attending this, and I hope you can all join us as well. We'll pack the house, socially distanced, and pack it as safely as we can to be socially distanced. Friday, June 4th at 6 p.m. is our local social. So the District 6510 is doing socially distanced socials to welcome folks back to Rotary. People we haven't seen in a while. Attendance prizes, appetizers, and an open bar are included at $10 per person, as long as it needs to be prepaid by 5/31. BelleClaireRotary.com/CB2R. We'll get that in the follow-up email as well, so you guys can all click that link directly from there. But that is at Bandanas in Carbondale, and we hope to see everybody there. What I love about it, there's no agendas, no seminars, no long speeches. We're going to be there to have a good time, chit chat with other people that we haven't seen in a while. And the district governor, Lorraine Cavatayo, will be there. And I can almost guarantee you that the new district governor, the incoming district governor, will be there, because I believe his home Rotary Club meets there. So should be a great opportunity to be with the DG and the district governor-elect. Satellite Club update. They're up to 12 members, and they're waiting applications for 4 more new Rotarians. So they are growing like crazy. Let's see if we can beat them, though. Let's see if we can add some more to our club. Let's make it a race. I think think it's great that they're growing at the capacity that they are. Shane, do you have anything you want to add about the Satellite Club?
Sure, I'll make a correction on the first line. We actually have 6 new people that they're in a process of filling out applications. So we added 2 more at our meeting yesterday. So the club is growing Rotary in Murfreesboro. So they're doing a good job of attracting locals to come back to Rotary in Murfreesboro. So I congratulate them.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Rotary International News, May is Youth Service Month. We cannot talk about the future without talking about children. They are our future. So that's the primary focus of May, is Youth Service Month. This week's polio update as of May 12th. There are new cases that are popping up in Afghanistan, Benin, Burkina. I don't even know where some of these places are. That's how bad my world geography is. But there are still cases that are popping up, but it's 1 or 2 in each of these areas. So we are getting very close to eradicating polio worldwide. Now it's time for some of your good news. Who has some good news to share today?
Rick and club members, I'll share since I don't see Nick Scovin on the call today, but he was recognized yesterday at the Chamber of Commerce Awards event as the Young Professional of the Year for 2020. Skovgaard, I'm sorry, I misspoke his last name.
That's fantastic. I've got some good news to share that our Giant City School had their awards night their awards presentation this week, and instead of allowing parents to be there, it was live streamed on YouTube. We were told by my first graders teacher that we should watch, and our first grader did get an award in language arts, so she was the top language arts student in the class. But then it got to my 6th grader, and she got an award for band. She got a district medal for band. She got a first in the district competition, and she got a medal for contributing in her class for being a top reader and reading more books in the year than anybody else. And then the part she had no idea was coming, and neither did we, that she got high honor roll for the year. So that kid definitely takes after her mother, but my 6th grader made high honor roll, something I never did in my academic career. So really proud of my junior high kid for doing that. Nobody wants to follow that one? Somebody's got to have some more good news for the week. Okay, so we'll keep moving along then. Sergeant at Arms, Gail, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rick. Well, I am sorry to have to announce that I observed some non-Rotarian behavior yesterday by one of our members who was driving a little irresponsibly, and that Rotarian suggested that he probably would be subject to a fine because of that, and so Mike Neal, unfortunately.
Yeah, I drove down a one-way parking lot to get a spot ahead of Gail and others. So yes, it was improper.
Just a reminder that the Sergeant at Arms is always out on the watch. Thanks, that's all.
Okay. So now it's time for our guest speaker. Linda, do you have an update from our guest speaker today?
I do. I'm working on trying to get her the link. She says it's not cooperating on her.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to join on my phone in order to copy the link to put in a text message to her. So just give me a second here.
There's a way that we can do that. So here is the link. I'm going to email it to you quick if you need to.
Okay. Yeah, I've been copying it from the actual meeting we're in, and
Okay.
it's still not I've copied the invitation, I've copied the invite, and it's still not working for her.
Okay. So we'll give it a minute. Does anybody have anything else? Good news, sad news, great news? You know, just general updates in life while we wait here a moment?
Oh, well, yesterday was my mother's last day of chemo. Woohoo.
Ooh.
Rick, we didn't talk much about the warming center today, but I understand that they do have need for garment hangers as they're trying to get their resources put in place to help the guests of the warming center to be prepared for job interviews. They have clothing, I think, that has been donated, but they're lacking garment hangers to get them up off the floor and out of bags so that they can keep them in good shape and easily accessible. So if anyone has a garment hanger that you're not using, I'll be glad to pick it up from you and transport it to the warming center.
And Jerry, I believe that's part of our project, right? Is that all included in the?
As our project, yes. Shelving was what they were asking for initially, but the hangers could be in there. The problem is with our grant, we cannot purchase anything before July 1st.
Okay.
So all of the purchases have to be made from July 1st through the end of January.
Okay.
But I can go ahead and talk with Carmelita, and I can build some. I've got a lot of scrap lumber here where I could build some racks for her. So
Okay.
I'll talk with her about that.
Sounds good. Yeah, when I was there a couple of weeks ago, they did have some bags on the floor of clothes that they've had a lot of people donate things, but a lot of the donations they've gotten for clothing. So if we're, also looking at clothing that people can wear for these, have been odd sizes, like a short leg and a big waist for a men's suit pant. A 48-28 is an odd size, and most people there aren't going to need that size. But if people have old, good condition pants, that's one of the needs that I know that they are going to have.
They're also going to need hangers.
Yes.
People forget that to get the clothes up on a rack, they need a hanger to put it on. So.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we may have our guest speaker. Linda, are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Carbondale.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. A journey to get here on Zoom, but thank you. And I'm actually on my cell phone on Zoom. So it's good to be here with you today. And thanks to Linda, and really thanks to Faith for getting me the Zoom information. I appreciate it. And was just listening to the end of that discussion. And I think today we want to talk a little bit about redistricting. Is that
Yes.
not correct here? The redistricting process. I was on an earlier Zoom this morning with State Representative Mary Flowers and Tim Butler from Springfield, and there's and helping them to put together a team of people to talk about statues and monuments. And so as they talked about statues and monuments and where we should place them, whether or not we should take them down or keep them, whether or not we should put them in museums, but most of the historians on the phone said the same thing. And it is that we need to tell the truth, and that history is oftentimes the interpretation, and it depends upon who is telling the story in terms of what story is actually told. And so as I look at the redistricting process, I think about that as well. I had the opportunity to look at the redistricting process with a group of Republicans, and I've also had the chance to look at it with a group of Democrats over the years. And when you think about the process of redistricting, everyone wants to make sure that they're safe. And we know that there have been times in many years past where during the redistricting process, people had to move. And those of us in Carbondale know Senator Luckefell, when they redistrict and changed the lines, and they moved to him all but out of his district. His part of his land, part of his home would have been in a new district. And so right now at the Capitol, There's a lot going on with respect to people talking about the budget, but all eyes are pointing to, and today there are a lot of people there talking about energy. There's people from Ameren are there, people from People's Gas are there, and they're talking about energy and solar. But there's a group of people that the majority of their time is being spent looking at different variations of maps and trying to figure out how we are going to redistrict the state, how we're going to draw the district lines, gerrymandering, and the fact that districts are supposed to be compact and they're supposed to be contiguous, and majority minority districts, and looking at the Voting Rights Act as they look to put those districts together. But clearly, when we talk about redistricting, just like with history, there will be some winners and there will be some losers when we talk about the redistricting process. And as we think about how all of this came about in Illinois, where the districts are looking at the populations of people, when we look at Illinois and the way that we've actually lost, we've lost seats in Illinois. We'll lose congressional seats in Illinois based upon the fact of our population. And when we think about as they draw new boundaries and draw new lines, the stakes are high. The stakes are high because as we look at the fact that we continue to lose population, we also lose representation. We lose representation, and the governor has said that he will veto a map that is unfair. And so when we think about unfair is in the eyes of that, either the party or the other person. And typically, when the Democrats are drawing the map, they're looking at for fairness for the Democrats. When the Republicans were drawing the map, they were talking about fairness, but really it ought to be about fairness for people. Who represents those individuals? And as the governor said, if it's, if the map is unconstitutional, he will veto that map. And then there are others. I was on the Institute looked at this whole issue of redistricting several years ago, and I see Dr. Lacey on the call with us. Mike Lawrence and others looked at the idea of redistricting, and at that time we were talking about maybe you ought to have an independent master and let that independent group write the map. And at that time, that's when the Republicans controlled, and they said, "Oh, absolutely not." And then the Democrats were saying, "Well, maybe we ought to go that direction." So sometimes it is fairness is in the eye of the beholder, and the devil's in the detail. As we look at what a fair map is and whether or not it actually represents the people that are supposed to be served, and drawing people out of their districts. And when we look at the way some of the districts are now, we have to question whether or not some of those districts are compact. We have to question whether or not they are contiguous. But there is in Springfield what's called the map room, and legislators are going in and they're looking at how their districts will look. And they've had probably a dozen or so hearings that have been held. And if you haven't had an opportunity to get on a Zoom meeting to hear some of those hearings, you might want to do that, because the Democrats have held many of them, and they've hosted them, and so are the Republicans around the state of Illinois, to kind of hear what people are saying about redistricting. And Senator Omar Aquino, he's the chair of the task force that's looking at redistricting. And what he says in a lot of his commentary is that he really wants to bring, and he's done a good job of that, bring all the voices to the table, making sure that they hear from different constituency groups. And it's interesting, many constituency groups are not at the table. They have not, they think about the budget, they think about how much their energy costs are, but they're really not thinking about what their representation is. And so you have individual groups like the Rotaries and your NAACPs and others that really ought to be talking about and sounding the bell for getting people to come to the table, to go to those hearings, to talk about the process and to look at the process, because it has been an open process and they hope for it to be a successful one. And then there are groups of reformers that have been meeting with the House and the Senate saying, no, as we look to draw these maps, we need to make sure that if you draw a map in a certain way, you've had the area that Speaker Madigan was in, there's now a Latino person that is in that district now, after all those years, very Latino area, but now you actually have a Latino person representing that area. And I think through the redistricting process, we'll probably see some more changes. The question becomes, will there be more individual districts that deal with individuals of Asian descent? We know we have some Asian American now individuals represented in the Illinois General Assembly. Well, a lot of that comes as a result of what happens in the redistricting process. Do we draw lines that are compact, they're contiguous, that they look at the Voting Rights Act, that they look at the nature of who lives in those districts, that they draw them in such a way that the community and communities of color especially have a say-so about who represents them in their particular areas. And so as we look to the end of the legislature adjourning May 31st, looking at what the committee is doing, one of the things that they've promised is that when they finish this session, they will have a map. And as the process unfolds, they'll have a map that is fair. And because the Constitution dictates that by June 30th, that's the deadline for the General Assembly to complete its legislative redistricting process. But it is interesting in terms of looking at a lot of the research, it is actually silent for the congressional map. And so the question becomes whether or not there's a stalemate, whether or not there's a commission has to come in and actually be formed to actually draw the map for them if they can't get it done. When you think about the census and the fact that things have changed in terms of who we are in Illinois, who the people are in Illinois, and where they live in Illinois. I talked to Senator Belt, and he has the area where he is around the Cahokia area. You even have Senator Terry Bryant, who actually represents Carbondale, for instance. When you speak of not being compact or contiguous, her area around Carbondale and Mount Vernon and all of that area, but she sweeps down. She has the area that Chef had, but she also sweeps down to a part of Cahokia. And so you have to question, where is the compact nature of her district when it is such a long district? And you have the areas in Springfield that reach all the way over to Decatur, and then they come around, and then they are in the area of Greenville, Illinois, where Frank Watson was when he was senator. And so those legislators are looking at those maps. They're looking at them strong, because the big part of this is as we look at, and someone is showing a big picture of Illinois, as you think about Illinois and you think about who represents you, can a person that has much of their interests is very, 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 very rural, and then you give them an area around the Metro East, how well can they represent, and how are they going to be attentive to those individuals in those communities? Or are they going to focus most of their attention on the center? And so I know that from a process perspective, the Democrats they control the process, and they did so in 2001. They did so in 2011. And again, it's no coincidence that the Democrats will control with the supermajority. They'll control the redistricting process as opposed to the Republicans in this redistricting season. And so as we think about where we are as a state, where we are with the redistricting, and when we look at the map here, we have to really think about who the legislators are, and what they're doing is when they go into the map room, they're taking very very careful pen and looking at the map, and they're looking at where their votes came from. You think about where the votes came from, and around the area, you have some very, very red areas. And depending upon who's drawing the lines, those areas and they want to keep those areas. And so those areas that are blue, they want to keep those blue areas. They're not really wanting to give those areas up. But as we think about looking at the census data that's being made available, when we look at the pandemic and we look at whether or not people will even go out to vote, and then we look at what's happening in other states around us in terms of, you know, the restrictions that are being put on some individuals in terms of where you can vote and when you can vote and what can be brought to you while you're in line at the voting booth. All of that matters. But more importantly, legislators, as they look at this redistricting process, are looking at drawing maps that they believe that they can win. And when we think about the congressional level as well, you know, the Democrats hold 13 of the states, overall congressionally, Democrats hold 13 of the states' current 18 congressional seats. And, you know, that's a slight dip in the population in 2010. That's what created the issue for us in Illinois. And that's why we lose a congressional seat in Illinois based upon our population. And we continue to see people leaving Illinois. I know there was a sign at one point at the Indiana border that said, if you're Illinois, come over to Indiana. And so population shift does matter. It matters who you have in your population. And that actually decides, you know, in terms of how many votes you get. And the Democrats are expected to draw boundaries in a way that they might expand, you know, the number of individuals that they have over Republicans. And so, again, it will be for us in Illinois, one of those things that individuals will continue to look at, you know, the whole idea of gerrymandering. And just talking to members of the legislature in Illinois, being around the state house, many of them are concerned. They're concerned about how the lines will be drawn, whether or not, you know, as we look at fairness. I mean, there is an issue of fairness, but there's also an issue of, at the end of the day, it's kind of like the monuments in terms of the history. You know, historically, those areas of the state where if you're a member, you know where your votes have come from. And if you see a large pocket of your votes going someplace else, and then there's even fights within the party. It's not only a Democrat or a Republican argument, because as they look to draw the lines, there's oftentimes people who are in neighboring areas that are, you know, you have even in Madison County, I use that one for an example, Madison and St. Clair County, where you have Senator Belt and you have Senator Crow. Both of those, you have two Democratic seats, and they're trying to figure out how you draw a Senator Belt seat so that he can continue to hold that seat as a Democrat. But you have Senator Crow on the other side of him in Madison County. Depending upon how you draw those district lines, she could be drawn into a district that actually has had traditionally more Republican votes. She sits in a seat that was held by Senator Hayne at one point. Senator Hayne was a Democrat, but his son, who's the state's attorney from that same area of Madison County, ran as a Republican. And so when you think about who's voting and who's coming out to vote, it will be very contentious in terms of how those lines are drawn. And we don't have as much access right now to the Capitol as years past, but in many years past, it was always interesting to go by the map room and to see individual members go in and out of the map room, and to see sometimes the look of disgust and discouragement on the faces of those individuals, because sometimes they were looking for just that 500 or 300 or 1,000 votes. And the only way they thought they could get those safe votes they're not taking them from, if it's a Democrat, they're not taking them from a Republican. They're taking that area from one of their colleagues and moving their colleague over. So it will be contentious. And I really encourage those of you on this phone to encourage others to get involved, to go to those conversations and hear what they are saying, because representation matters, and it does matter who your legislators are and how they will support individual communities. So I'll stop there and try to answer questions that you might have.
I have a question, Dr. Baker. How
Yes.
does the loss of a congressional district, or will it impact us here in Southern Illinois?
Oh, it absolutely will definitely impact us in Southern Illinois in terms of the loss. Anytime that there's been a discussion over the past couple of years whether or not the Carbondale area is either urban or is it rural. And sometimes being rural is a very good thing because there's some dollars that come with being rural, but there are also some dollars that come oftentimes at greater, some pieces of legislation say you only get this money if you're in an urban area as opposed to a rural area. But you need to have someone at the table. And so that gives us, anytime for us, Illinois as a whole, losing a seat means you have less power at the table. For us having Dick Durbin and to have been there as long as he's been there, he brings voice and he's at the table. He's saying things about Carbondale and he understands the ruralness of Carbondale and its needs, but he also understands the urban area of the East St. Louis and Metro East area, because that's the area that he grew up in. And then he spent time in Chicago. So when we lose seats, we lose voice. We lose a person at the table that is speaking out for our interests in Illinois. It is not good to lose that congressional power and voice in DC.
Dr. Baker, this is Faith. I put a comment in the chat or a question. You talked about the hearings. Where do you find out about the hearings and are they completed at this point? Is it too late to sit in on one? Where do we get that information?
No, they're on the General Assembly website. They should have the redistricting hearings. And then your local legislators typically on their home pages talk about the redistricting hearings and when they're being held. So you probably can find them on ILGA. But if you, let's say Carbondale, go to Senator Terry Bryant, she should have something on her website about reapportionment or redistricting and when those hearings are going to be held, but they are still having them.
Okay. Would you happen to know or venture a guess as to which congressional district would be lost?
We will probably lose something around the is it the Shimkus? We're gonna, if the downstate one, it will be the area around the area where Shimkus is currently.
Okay,
That
was the speculation that I had heard. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what district is that? I'm sharing a map right now of the Illinois Congressional District. So what district is that you think we're going to lose some area out of?
I'm looking at this on my phone, so I apologize. Let's see, Shimkus is down around the Collinsville area.
Okay.
So it's in that area.
So we have a question from one of our guests. Is it Nia?
Nia.
Oh, so Nia, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Baker. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
It's good to see you.
You as well.
The seat that's being talked about now, I do believe is represented by Mary. Is it Mary Miller? That seat, does that ring a bell? That's the
let's see,
the rep that it is now.
And is that down around Collinsville, the Shimkus
yeah,
area?
exactly. Because I used to be in Shimkus district, and then they changed it. My congressman now is Rodney Davis.
Yeah. So it is actually, Illinois will lose one representative in the U.S. House of Representatives because our state declined for the first time in 200 years. And so we literally dropped, our population dropped in 20. And basically, the census data at this point is pretty clear that we're going to lose that seat. And when you think about 200 years, for us to, when we think about the Illinois population and the fact that it's declining, that could be a whole host of reasons for the out migration, people moving to other states from Illinois. Some people talk about the fact that they leave for better housing and employment opportunities. Others leave because of some of the public policies. Some leave because of, and it's interesting, on one study I was looking at a couple of days ago, as I was, after talking to Ms. Flowers about coming to talk to you, I was looking at one study, and it said that the number one reason that individuals have left Illinois, they said it was because of our tax policies in Illinois. And that's probably not going to change, especially when we look at COVID and things that have happened around, our economy in Illinois. We hope that, and we were thinking that there would be, and there has been funding that has come in for marijuana and other things, but clearly the way that we tax, is one survey that I read, the number one reason, and even in some of our Simon polls, we've not done one in a couple of years, but the last couple of polls that we did, people talked about our taxation policies in Illinois as being the number one driver for people leaving. And they thought that the economic outlook in Illinois was not where they thought it would be. And as a result, population decline, we lose the one seat.
So our guest has another question. Go ahead.
Actually, it's a comment. You know that people are saying that if a seat got lost, people are saying obviously it should be in Chicago, because Chicago has lost a population or whatever. But when I moved to Illinois almost 41 years ago, Illinois had like it was either 22 or 24 seats. And there are only, Illinois is one of only 3 states that lost population, according to what they're saying in the census.
I think near the 7 states that lost representatives: California, Illinois, right. Michigan, was it New York, Ohio?
New York, right,
Pennsylvania, Virginia, yeah, those
right.
were the ones that are losing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, Texas, and people are moving to Texas. Texas added 2 seats. Colorado, Florida, Montana, North Carolina, and Oregon all added a seat.
Right.
And so when we think about the migration of people, I mean, as they say, vote with our feet. People, and a lot of it is retirees. Where do people want to retire? They are moving to Florida to retire. Oregon and the Carolinas. I know there's some businesses that are talking about even leaving Missouri, going to the Carolinas. So those areas they got more seats. And Texas is growing. People are leaving California, going to Texas.
Dr. Baker, do you know if Carbondale has lost its home rule status because of the census count?
I have not seen anything that suggests that. I have been asked that question. I don't know. I haven't checked with the mayor's office to see if that is the case. But I have heard discussion about not only Carbondale, but the question about several other areas around the state. Once the census count is now validated and individuals are looking at what might be the unintended consequences of the population shift, I would certainly hope that has not happened and will not be the case. But I think that is something that people are looking at, not only for Carbondale, but some other places in Illinois. And to Nia's point, people are scrambling and trying to look at exactly what ends up happening with where the seats are. But clearly there are congressional implications. There are also funding implications. When you have below a certain number of people in your area, what funding can you apply for? What resources can come into a community? And so population does matter. A lot of the programs and funding are formula driven. And so population does matter.
So I'm seeing a lot of comments that people are graduating and leaving, and I've seen similar things with my friends as they've graduated. They've gone north to Minnesota or Wisconsin, I grew up in Northern Illinois and I've seen the same thing. My brothers all moved out of state and have been elsewhere. And the biggest drivers for them are, as we're, continuing to beat the same drum, the high tax rates. And there's a lot of concern with that the cost of living, even the gas taxes. I moved here from Pennsylvania and people said, oh, great, you're getting out of Pennsylvania, which had the highest gas taxes in the country at that point in time when I moved here. Only to come to Illinois and have them go up again. And now Illinois has the higher gas taxes. So I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't know how the legislation can address that, but I know that that's a major concern of young people and retirees as they grow in their lives. So
Yeah.
we'll do one more question here, and then I think we need to wrap up our meeting for the day. So Naya, go ahead again.
Oh, thank you. Well, now, what part of Pennsylvania did you come from?
North Central Pennsylvania. I lived in Williamsport for about.
Oh, I know where it is. I graduated from, did graduate school at Lehigh University.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so I know Pennsylvania very well. And you're right about the young people leaving. And by the way, my daughter is a Saluki, and she lives in Nashville, and she has no intentions of even returning to Illinois unless something happens to me. She's the only child or whatever. But she was telling me, she teases me all the time and tells me that she lives in a state that has no income tax.
And they're growing. They are
right.
They're absolutely growing.
So there's another question that was put in the chat. Where does the crime aspect and cost of living fall into people relocating elsewhere?
Well, clearly in the city of Chicago, you see many surveys that talk about in the city of Chicago proper, crime being one of those key factors that people are migrating from the Chicagoland area. That comes out in many different surveys. And I know that there's a host of things, not only in Chicago, but in other major cities where crime and policing and what happens in those two areas is a reason that business and industry. The other thing that, the economy in general, if you have businesses that don't want to come into your city or to be in your state because of tax issues, and then you have pockets where crime and quality of life are not as such, that all goes into the entire formula. And I think the other thing that all of us have to do is pause and take a look at COVID and what impact will coming out of this pandemic have for cities across this country. Because when you look at areas where right now you've had people staying put because there's been a moratorium on even for renters. Well, those moratoriums are quickly coming off. And so what happens to those individuals? Do they stay in those areas or do they go? Can they find jobs? Will companies continue? Will they bring them back in the way that they had them before the pandemic? So I think we may be in just hold our seats, because we may see some differences in populations, not only in Illinois, but across the country as we come out of this pandemic.
It's about $900 more I got to pay before I can get it.
I have one last question that just rolled into the chat, and I just want to recognize Jerry here, and then we'll close out the meeting. Is there a state that has the fairest districting? Linda, you're muted right now. I don't know if it's because of, I think we muted everybody. We had some feedback, but.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. Sorry. Well, fair is kind of like beauty. It's really in the eye of the beholder. But there are some states that actually, some people say fair are those that use a master to actually do it, where they take it out of the hands of the legislature. Some say that those are the fairest states. If you have a state that has a master, and that some people say that those are they like those states better because they don't the politicians kind of are out of it. So many say that the ones that are drawn by politicians tend to favor their own parties. Maryland, they have, somebody was talking about Maryland, but again, that one even it favors more Democrats than Republicans. And then Missouri, they say there's favor Republicans more than Democrats. So, in terms of, many people say that redistricting that's done in the smoke-filled rooms, if you will, where you have politicians who will, by nature of wanting to stay in power, are vulnerable to gerrymandering and skewing for their one party over the other. But it's in terms of fair, I think it really, most would say any state, and there are just a small handful of them that allow a special group to do it and take it out of the hands of the legislature. But then some people even say in that instance, who are those people controlled by? So, it's always a race to the finish every 10 years to try to figure out, can a map be fair? And I think that's the $1 million question. Can a map be a fair map? Just knowing human nature being what it is. And as I said, there was a group of us that at the Simon Institute many years that worked on trying to figure out if we could actually have a situation in Illinois. And we actually tried it under Democrats and Republicans, where they would allow someone else outside of the legislature to take control of the map. But clearly, even though the Constitution would allow that, the party in power always says no.
Well, thank you once again, Dr. Baker, for joining us today and the very informative discussion.
And actually, one of the things, if the group wants to take a look at 6 states: Alaska, Arizona, California, Idaho, Montana, and Washington. And an independent commission is responsible in those areas for drawing their maps. And people, there are those that even have an issue with those. So if you're looking for, I say again, fair is in the eye of the beholder, but at least that is one that those are states that purport to have independence in their process as opposed to the General Assembly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all that. I think we had more questions today than we've had in a long time with the guest speakers. So great presentation. We appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. And I apologize for my technical difficulties, but I'm so happy to join you. And thank you to Faith and Ms. Flowers for the invitation, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
All right. What's happening next week? We have Jane Kogi of the Sierra Club, Illinois chapter, joining us. And then the following week, we'll be back in person. So we'll get our agenda out there, but we are going to have the virtual option still available. So don't worry if you're not quite ready for that. At this time, if everyone would please join me in the four-way test. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it fair
to all concerned?
Third, will it build
goodwill and better
friendships?
And fourth, will it be
beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you again next week.